I am a sufferer of PTSD, and it's left me a nervous wreck. I know that many of those with the same symptoms as I, symptoms you'll come to understand shortly, manage to reach some semblance of normal life with the help of therapy or medication, but it seems I'm different. There isn't a thing that can help me, and believe me, I've tried them all. My situation has left me constantly fearing for my safety, perpetually anxious, and completely incapable of holding on to a job or relationship, personal, social, or romantic. If I were able to hold down a career or social life, it might not be so bad. I'd have something to distract me or someone to keep me grounded, but eventually random panic attacks, unexpected screaming and night terrors put pay to any attempt at a life, and "I don't think you're right for this position," or "I think we should see other people," are never far away. I'll tell you now that you really find out who your friends are when suffering from this. It turns out that none of mine were true friends. All of them eventually left me to my own devices when they realised how severe the problem was and that I wouldn't soon come around and stop being a morbid bastard. Yes, one of them actually used those words. A word of advice. If you know anyone suffering from this or indeed any other severe mental illness, then do not offer the standard platitudes like "I'm here for you," "You have my number if you need to talk," or anything like that unless you genuinely mean it after long and careful reflection, because the abandonment the sufferer feels when you decide you can't handle us is drastically worse than if you'd never offered your shoulder to lean on in the first place. I'm not saying don't support them, but don't pretend you're going to be their pillar if you're just going to crumble when things get rough. Of what left me in this condition, I don't even really remember. The exact details of the event, the perpetrator, or even the location are obscured to me, but the elements and hints of it are always in my mind, though seen as if just behind a gossamer veil. It's like looking out on a bright, sunlit street scene through net curtains. You can see what's going on, but the specifics are indistinguishable from the vagaries. When something makes it too real, however, I live what I can see like I'm actually there. Almost every night I have dreams of it, see the event in the broken pictures and fractured visions that sleep brings. In them, I can just about make out the inside of a building, chairs and tables sitting around like some kind of restaurant, dim lighting and very few people around. Suddenly there's a commotion that confuses me as someone I hadn't noticed before, a figure I can vaguely hear quietly crying as if they're trying to stifle it, a person whose face and body are obscured by shadow to the point that I can't even tell their gender, approaches the table where I'm seated alone. I'm about to greet them when they lift a dull metal object like a pointing figure towards me, and confusion gives way to fear and recognition of it as they aim it at my chest before the world erupts into fire and pain. As I awake, I'm always struck by hyperventilation and lost to panic until the sights fade from my mind and I'm able to control my breathing and stem the tears that pour from my bleary eyes. It takes several more minutes before the racked sobs and shaking stops and I finally convince my mind that what I've seen isn't actually happening to me. If I'm lucky, this happens towards the morning, as I know that once it does, I won't be getting any more sleep that night, and I really don't enjoy sitting around with nothing worthwhile to distract me until a socially acceptable time to go about my daily business. At best, at that time, I'll start scanning television channels and end up watching the infomercials on some all-night shopping channel for literally anything that'll distract me enough to free my mind even slightly from the fresh memories until it's time to start the day. Most of the time, even that won't work, and my fate for the rest of the night is to wallow in self-pity and ask a God that I no longer believe in the ever-popular "why me" line of questioning. As bad as the nights are, the days are worse. At least I know when I go to bed there's the chance to mentally prepare myself, albeit mostly inefficiently, for what's almost certainly coming. When I'm awake, however, there's no way of knowing when it'll hit, when I'll see flashes of memory no clearer than the dreams but doubly traumatic. It can be, and often is, triggered by almost anything. Loud noises, sudden impact, or even someone brushing against me unexpectedly. More disturbing to me is that almost as often as not, there will be no trigger. I can be washing dishes, watching television, or worst of all, out on an errand, and I'll end up in the fetal position on the floor, crying like a baby at what my brain is seeing as a completely unprovoked and violent attack. Situations where my attacks strike in public are embarrassing to the point of mortifying, of course, and I've developed severe agoraphobia as a result, rarely leaving the house anymore for fear of it happening. To date, the worst timing for an attack so far was when I'd been clear for a few days and I was starting to feel a little secure in myself, maybe even complacent, and it struck as I was hanging a picture that I'd allowed myself to become attached to on one of my rare excursions out of the house. The glass in the frame shattered into a myriad of transparent razor blades as it struck the floor, and I fell on top of them, clutching at my body, writhing and shrieking like a rabbit caught in a trap. As usual, one of the neighbours called the police, and when they finally arrived, that's where they found me, lying huddled on the ground in the shredded and blood-stained remnants of my shirt, teeth gritted so tightly one of my molars had actually cracked, eyes wide and staring into nothing. I ended up in hospital, where it took several hours to ensure all the minute shards had been removed from my back and arm, and even longer to convince the psychiatric visitors that it wasn't deliberately inflicted and was just a case of wrong place, wrong time. Thanks to that particular event, I received a letter a few days later informing me that one too many noise complaints had been received, and for the third time since the attack started, I was politely asked to vacate the premises and find new accommodation. Like I mentioned before, I've tried desperately to find a fix for myself. I've had cognitive behaviour therapy that only seemed to bring the experience closer to the fore without giving me a viable fight back for it. Talking therapy that wanted me to focus more on my relationship with my family. Art therapy that just anchored the problem into a physical object rather than getting it out of me. Guided meditation that couldn't possibly do any good when you're rocking back and forth clutching your knees. And the less said about hypnotherapy, the better. Suffice it to say that I paid for the damage to the room in addition to the therapist's time. The pills aren't any better. I've been prescribed medications that have done everything from turning half my body numb for minutes at a time to leaving me a drooling vegetable at night, and none of them have done anything to lessen the anxiety and panic that I feel almost constantly. By now, I don't think that anyone I've seen even believes anything I say about the event anymore, and honestly, I'm not even sure I do now, so I've decided to give up on the whole lot and just accept that what will happen, though I can't convince my mind to stop fighting me. Through all of it though, the lost jobs, lost homes, lost loves, constant anxiety and perpetual panic, the absolute worst part is not knowing. Not knowing exactly what I'm seeing, where and when it will happen, or who's going to do it to me. If the premonitions I'm having of my own murder gave me any way of preventing it, or even a slight hope that I could avoid it, maybe I wouldn't be such a mess all the time, and maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't be a victim of this pre-traumatic stress disorder. And there we have the short story PTSD. It's another one of my own. Don't worry, I will have more up by other authors soon. This isn't my strongest work, I think, but it's not the worst thing I've ever done. I've written stories that I'm never going to release. I've kept them just so I can say, what were you thinking? This one didn't have the strongest concept. It was, I'm going to admit, I thought up the concept of pre-traumatic stress syndrome before I had the story written. You know, it's a case of, I wonder what would be a condition if someone saw their own death coming. Given the strength of the concept, I don't think it's turned out too bad. Originally, the story actually included not a shooting at a restaurant, but a mass shooting in a mall, which is a really bad idea, especially with the way the world's going today, so I took it down to a more sort of crime drama on ITV2 level sort of thing, so it wasn't as insensitive as it was before. Before anyone mentions it, I know that actual PTSD is a terrible condition. I know people who suffer from it. I was not intending at all, in the least, to make light of it in this video. It was really just an alternate take on what if it went the other way. I do have experience with certain therapies, obviously not for PTSD myself, but for other things. CBT and talking therapy, I've been through, so I have an idea how that works. Hypnotherapy that I mentioned in the story, obviously I know that's not how it works. You know, you don't get hypnotized and then go off to the deep end and smash up the room. It's a recollection thing, really, to help you confront and pass over the situations you've been in. So I did take a little bit of artistic license with that and turn it into what it is. I think it could have been worse because it still kind of plays to what some people's expectations of hypnotherapy are, even if they're not 100% accurate. This story is probably about as good as it's going to get. I could maybe make it better if I had the time, but I'm not really going to expend the energy on something that I don't think has a huge amount of potential in it anyway. It's pretty much reached the potential it's going to. If you liked the video, hit the like button. If you didn't like the video, hit the like button, because I really need the likes. Comment down in the comments with your opinion on the video and the story. Comment up in the address bar if you want to go somewhere else. And subscribe for more. I'm putting out as many of these videos on schedule as I can. Thank you very much for being here. Until next time, everybody be beautiful to each other.